Okay, welcome everybody. Sean Nahas, pre-match media availability before we head to Portland for Courage versus Thorns this weekend. Sean, you've got some of your World Cup players back. You're back to league play this week. If you could just take us through the team's mindset here as we enter the weekend match in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to start getting the players back and integrated. It's a tough one because we're traveling obviously across the country again. So especially coming out of an international break or World Cup break. So yeah, we'll just see. We'll see how the team builds, and with the weekend off, sort of hit a reset button and try and recalibrate a little bit. It's been a heavy season, a lot of miles logged on some of the players, whether it's the World Cup players or the players that have been here. So we're looking forward to it. We're dealing with some nicks, so we'll push through as we always have, and hopefully get back to a positive start going into this last push of the season.
Don't want to necessarily single anybody out, but obviously getting your captain back, Denise, is a huge thing for you. What has she brought back just in this week since she's returned to camp?
Yeah, I mean, look, she was gone for a good reason, right? And unfortunately for them, they didn't get past the group stage. But for her to have her back, I think just her energy, her presence, her experience. I think she's still playing a little bit of catch up. It's tough to be away for as long as you are and not in our environment, and then come into our environment, because the way they manage loads on these World Cup breaks is very different than what we do, because it's more preparing themselves for their individual event, which makes complete sense. So yeah, it's just great to have her back, and Sully is who she is, and having her back in the mix is obviously a positive for our group.
Turn it over to questions.
Coach, as a head coach of the team, you've spoken a lot about the players filling in and filling the shoes of the players that had to go play in the World Cup. And so now with players returning, how do you kind of delegate who's going to step back into the lineup versus things have obviously been working extremely well for you with the players you've had?
Yeah, it's two sets, right? So the players that have been getting the minutes here, it's obviously helped them build, because they were a lot of younger players. So with inexperience, now you can say they have experience. So if anything, it's increased our depth. But at the end of the day, we still have to make decisions each weekend based on what we think we need to do against the opposition, and once everyone's healthy, and we want to make sure we're managing these players back in too. Just because they're back doesn't mean they're necessarily back. So there's that side of it too. So it's a day-by-day process, but I just finished telling the group that the minutes that these players have logged is only going to help us, and now they know they can be called upon when needed. But there's no set, this is our group and this is the group that won't get rostered. So we only have 7 games left in our season, minus the semifinals of the Challenge Cup. So each week's going to be different, but we have to be careful so that we don't lose players long term. So everyone will be called upon when necessary.
Do you anticipate a minutes restriction on some of those World Cup players as they kind of get back into the swing of things?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're not. I mean, some of them are just getting back. So we're still looking at how we want to manage them. How do they feel? We don't want to rush them back, because that could set them back. I mean, some of them have had off for several weeks. Some of them flew from Australia all the way to Denmark to come back here. Now to fly them all the way back across the country is sort of like, let's be careful here. So it's just having conversations with the players, see how they feel. If this was a home game or an East Coast game, it might be a little bit different of an approach. But flying across the country, where some of them basically just flew over to get home, I don't know how much sense that makes, but I didn't make the schedule. So.
When did they get back to?
They're still slowly. Most of them are back yesterday.
Okay.
Some are still on their way, flight situations and stuff like that. But 95% of the players are back. It's just how we have to look at their loads and minutes and say, do we just get through this weekend, and then we have a home game next week? It allows them a full week and a half of reintegration, keep them healthy, and then go from there. What I can't do as a coach and as a staff is, everyone's back, on you go, and then 5 minutes in they pop a hamstring and they're out for the rest of the season. So yeah, it's a tough one. And I'd say the biggest issue is just the cross-country flight.
So did you look at the World Cup as something good for your team? It obviously built depth, so you look at it as a positive.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a positive both ways. You have players who are in the World Cup, which is great, 6, and then you have players who it allowed them time to get minutes and develop and get a part of the league and play the way we want and get integrated in our style of play. And let's be honest, I don't think they performed poorly. A couple of performances we can discuss, but that's part of being a young team, and the energy's been great. They've, if anything, I told the group as well, like, when they were gone, the standard was raised. Now it's up to the players when we return to everyone's back that we raise the standard again in this final push. Because the easy thing to do is say, well, I'm not the experienced player, this is how we play, I'm not used to it, but if anything, they've raised the bar. And now that we're going to have the World Cup players back, I think that's a benefit, because now the training sessions are that much better. So yeah, it's my first time dealing with World Cup management, but it's a good thing.
Do you sorry.
No.
Do you anticipate Caroline playing? Yeah, well, assuming she gets back in time.
I don't know. She's the same boat as everybody else. We gotta be careful, and as great as a player she is, Fox is a great player, Rika, Mila, they're all great players, and Manaka's here now. She got in 2 nights ago, but is it worth her flying across the country in that environment where she really hasn't integrated and eaten properly and getting used to the adjustment of her body and stuff like that? And she's still a young kid. She's only 19. Kobayashi's dealing with a little bit of a knock, so how do we manage that? But I'm not that guy to say, oh, you're back, okay, here you come, and you haven't trained and you haven't played a game in 3 weeks and you haven't sprinted. It takes one sprint and that thing goes. And for me, as a coach, I have to look out for the player regardless if they want to play or not. They could hate me for that time, but they'll hate me less if I force them to play. And the word force is heavy, but ask them to play, put them in, and then they weren't ready. I wouldn't be doing my job properly.
How early on in the season, how much was there a focus on preparing for this weekend, this return to play, just based on all the different variables that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think we've always trained the same way. The level of training hasn't changed. I think if anything, it's really been a week by week process, and now that they're all starting to come back, now it's okay, where do they stand? We've gotten all their numbers from their federations to see what their loads were like. Some were loaded properly because they played a lot, like Caro and Fox and Sully. Some were underloaded because they didn't play a lot or they got minimal minutes. So it's, we gotta be careful with that. So yeah, they're coming from an environment which was the winter to now coming into the hottest week of the year here in North Carolina. So that's a whole nother ball game. So again, it's player management. But a lot of, I met with Rika and Mila this morning and told them our plan, and they were relieved, I'll say, and excited at the same time. Talked with Fox a little bit. She as much as she wants to play, we have to have continued discussions just to see where she's at. But I would probably say we're not the only club. Every club's going to be dealing. There's some players that aren't even back yet with their teams. So, look, a lot of these players went through a real tough time. They all go there to win, and sometimes it's more of the mental break than it is anything else, and we have to honor that. We have to be respectful to that, and yeah, we'll continue to do that. They're people too, so.
With Emily and Casey, do you almost feel like there's like a sense of urgency to kind of get back to play after what happened kind of with Team USA and maybe some of the disappointment over in Australia?
Definitely for Case. Case hasn't played.
Right.
Case has been really sharp this week. She's been here all week. But it's different because she's not running around, whereas Fox played every minute. And the way Fox plays, it's all high tempo. So I think it's definitely more of an urgency for Case to get back into the fold and start getting herself comfortable again. I think Fox is a little bit different just because of how many miles she's logged. And I look back to when we had the She Believes Cup and she came back and she was absolutely shattered. It took her 2 weeks to get adjusted. And when they last went to Australia, she came back and she was shattered. So, I gotta look out for the kid. She's a young talent. But I definitely think that they wanna play. But I would probably say Casey's a little bit more of, don't tell me what's happening, I'm gonna tell you, in a good way. And just because she's logged so many minutes, I gotta be careful. Yeah.
With the return being, it's number 1 versus number 2 in the NWSL on Sunday. Like, is it almost for you as a coach, like, gosh, I wish it was, not that there's any easy games, but a game that maybe is a little bit less determined as who's going to be the league leader after the weekend?
Yeah, look, you still have to play. We can not play Portland, go and have a real struggle, and then Portland wins and they're still above us, right? So that's the way the league is shaking out right now. Every week this year on out, it's going to be competitive and you want to compete. And I'd rather be in the position we're in now than if we were in last place for us personally, because these games have a lot of meaning. But if you look at the schedule, every game this season has meaning for everybody, which is what you want. Look, I think it's going to be a unique one. I don't know how many of their players are back either. But if anything, it's a test for our younger players to see how they do, if they're the ones called upon. So you have to be put in these environments to know. So it's part of the growth, and that could be a benefit to us down the road too.
Turn it over to Zoom. Start with Nicholas.
My question got asked, I'm good.
Okay, great. Dan?
Thank you, Sean. Most of my easy ones got asked already, so I'm just gonna have to jump right in with, there's some reports linking Carol Lee maybe to a transfer to Europe. I'm just wondering, if you have any comment on that.
Looking for a story, aren't we?
Not my reports, just following.
No, I know. I mean, you, Tyler, everyone's retweeting and doing all that stuff. I get it. It's part of the world football landscape. I will, just so you know, Dan, I'll never comment on player decisions and things like that. That's a club thing, and we're well aware of the rumors. I can tell you that be careful on what you listen to. But at the end of the day, our expectations is that she's going to be here. Whoever is pushing these rumors it's not us, I can tell you that. And we're hopeful that Carol will be back, but other than that, I won't speak on any stories that anyone other than the Courage are going to talk about, because they're not in our camp, and those stories are just that, stories until they become a reality. So.
Is she there right now, or is she not back yet?
She's not back yet. We're hopeful that she'll be back today, but that doesn't mean anything for this weekend. It's just been a process. Obviously, there's visa processes and all that, so I wanted to give her a little bit of extra time because of the situation that they were in. But hopefully, she'll get into the country this week, today, and then we'll take it day by day from there.
And then just, you touched on this a little bit, but in terms of the return to play, how much would you say the balance is between physical and mental in terms of players coming back? The U.S. players obviously had a pretty disappointing tournament, so how much is that balance as opposed to their physical state?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest with you, I think it's definitely an equal balance. I think, especially with the States. I spoke with Mila and Rika this morning, and they really loved their experience. There was no expectations of them, right? So they feel like they benefited from the event, and they did more than what other people expected them to. The States is obviously always expected to win, and then that obviously didn't happen. So I think there's definitely a heavy load there. But in speaking with Casey and Fox, they have smiles on their faces, and to be honest, I didn't bring up the World Cup to them. I didn't talk to them about it. If they want to talk to me about it, they can. I'm not there, so it's hard for me to give any advice or feedback on it. But I'm going to go off of their information to me, and if they need me for anything, we'll be there. But now that they're back in camp, I want to sort of get them going, unless they come to me like, hey, look, I'm really struggling mentally right now, and we'll go from there. But it's so tough because we weren't in the camp, and I don't want to dive, and if they're trying to move on, drag them back in, so it's a fine line. So I've left that door open to them if they want to come chat with me about anything that maybe they experienced. But they were smiling and laughing and happy to be back, and now it's just a matter of when that happens. It's a good question, though.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, cheers.
Anybody else last ones? Great. Thanks, Sean.
All right, guys, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Let's go.
Thank you.